But I tell you what, we are in the dog days of summer here in North Carolina, guys. It is hot outside. These heat domes that keep getting stuck over the eastern United States. Killing me, man. Killing me. Makes me remember the summer that we spent filming up in Canada. The weather was beautiful up there. It's an absolutely gorgeous country. But man, their laws are horrible. So get a load of this. A chicken farmer in Canada was arrested and sent to jail for a couple days for fighting against the Egg Cartel of Canada. You guys might think this headline's a joke, but it's not a joke. It actually did happen. Although his reasons weren't necessarily for selling eggs, like a lot of social media posts posted about. He didn't get thrown in jail for selling eggs, although a lot of people would argue that that was kind of a primary reason for why he was jailed.
Many of you have noticed that we keep wearing these leather patch hats that say Defend the Right to Farm on them. These leather patch hats support our nonprofit, Meet My Neighbor Productions. You can get your hat at Yanasa Trading Co. and help us defend the right to farm through education, outreach, and, as we've been doing over the last couple of years, farm relief efforts. So get your leather patch hat and let others know that you defend the right to farm.
We've seen a lot of crazy things going on in Canada, from a Utah rancher who moved up there and married her husband, being threatened with jail time for watering fields to feed their animals, 400 ostriches being put down after fully recovering from bird flu. Makes you wonder how far apart the Canadian government is from the Victorian government of Australia. So let me give you a little backstory on this story real quick. So back in April, RCMP rolled in with pretty much a small army into this farmer's farm and arrested him. Neighbors and people who lived in the area said that the amount of the police force that was there to arrest this egg farmer seemed surreal to them. I mean, they're not used to seeing a bunch of police vehicles roll up to do this massive arrest of this little egg farmer. Henk Van Essen is basically a 61-year-old egg farmer who, according to social media posts, was arrested for selling eggs. But like I said, that's not actually what he was arrested for. For several years leading up to this, Hank had battled the Egg Farmers of Alberta, basically over the intricacies of the Canadian egg supply system. This is kind of a web of quotas and licensing designed to control how many eggs can be produced and by whom. Who has the right to raise and sell eggs in Canada. Hank has a quota that says he can only sell from 300 eggs. So a lot of people assumed when they saw this massive entourage of police officers rolling up into his farm to arrest him that he must have sold more eggs than from his 300 eggs. Hens, sorry, it's 300 hens. He can sell more than 300 eggs, he can only sell from 300 hens. That's his quota. However, according to EFA spokesperson David Webb, he clarified to local media the recent arrest was not related to egg production or quota violations. It was 100% related to his repeated dismissal of court orders and not appearing in court. Records do confirm that Van Essen was operating within the legal limit for unlicensed producers, which is under 300 hens, and therefore his arrest was for civil contempt of this court, not for selling eggs. But this does involve a civil suit that Hank has had with the egg farmers of Alberta. So let me just kind of go through the background of what happened here. Van Essen had been involved in a civil dispute with the EFA over alleged noncompliance with provincial egg quota regulations, whether he was exceeding the number of laying hens allowed without a quota. During this process, Van Essen was ordered by the court to attend hearings and comply with record-keeping and inspection requirements. According to multiple sources, from the Lethbridge Herald to Western Producer, Van Essen repeatedly failed to appear for these mandatory court dates. As a result of his failure to comply with the court orders, not for selling eggs or exceeding the quota, but just not going along with what the court had asked him to do, the court issued a civil warrant for his arrest. This is kind of a standard for contempt cases where somebody's not following instructions from the courts. The RCMP acted on this civil warrant and arrest for Van Essen at his farm in April. He was jailed for 2 days before agreeing to court-mandated conditions, including allowing an on-farm inspection and providing business records. I mean, one could say that he was arrested for selling eggs. He wouldn't be in this situation if he wasn't an egg farmer. Now, typically, even in Canada, what he did being in contempt of court wouldn't necessarily require this massive show of force. Okay, so there is some debate on whether or not the RCMP may have gone a little overboard. If you've watched this channel, they don't necessarily like farmers. We've seen that in several cases in Canada. RCMP sent five 5 vehicles to arrest this one 61-year-old egg farmer. How much of a threat is an egg farmer going to be? Is he going to throw yolk at you? According to Maxim Bernier, it is a shame that a 61-year-old man has been arrested like a criminal by 5 RCMP officers. He is just an entrepreneur trying to serve his community, then labeled the supply management system as a cartel or mafia. He also said Canada is starting to look like a communist country when we use the police to enforce economic monopolies. So when this guy was released from jail, one of the things he had to do was release 4 years worth of records to the court on his egg production business. He also might have to cull up to 1,000 of his birds. Mandatory culling of birds. Sound familiar in Canada? So I think this is going to be an interesting story to see unfolding, and I'd like to see how this evolves in Canada. We've now seen 400 healthy ostriches culled. Now we might see 1,000 healthy birds culled because of this, in this particular case, because of this quota system that he can't sell more than so many eggs because of the mafia that controls Canada, according to politicians in Canada. Not calling them a mafia or a cartel. Canada is one of those countries that has, maybe unintentionally inflicted war upon its own food supply and therefore its own citizens with its own socialist policies. This is what happens when these policies go too far. They are put in place for what they consider to be good intentions, to control the food supply, which is always a good intention, and to control the market, which is also always I can't say either one of those is good intentions. The intention is to make sure that there is a fair and equitable market for all of those involved, and the people who end up suffering are the farmers, the people trying to make a living off of growing food, and therefore the Canadian people in general who end up having less choice, less freedom of choice. I'm curious to see where this case goes. I'm curious to see how many more of these situations we're going to see coming out of Canada. A lot of the vote control comes from cities in Canada, just like here in the United States. And so if they don't understand how these policies are actually impacting their rural neighbors, they don't understand how it circles back to them, it may never actually, we may never see an improvement out there. And that's why we report on these things and we help people understand, hey, look, this policy, which, apparently is done with good intentions, is actually having an impact on farmers, their ability to make a living. You probably have to sell eggs from more than 300 hens to make a living these days. And as a result, when you go to the grocery store, your options are limited. You don't have a freedom of choice. We don't have a freedom of choice here in the United States. When we go to the grocery store, there are only so many major producers of the foods that are on those shelves. If you want something else, you have to go out and you have to seek it at farmers markets. And even then, a lot of the people at those places are restricted. They can't sell certain goods. They have to get certain licenses. They have to go through certain channels that are very prohibitive. I'm not saying that things shouldn't be regulated. I'm not saying that there shouldn't be some sort of license put in place for things, but a lot of the reasons why people are unable to get those licenses has less to do with finances and more to do with the regulatory burdens that come with them. Now, this guy has found himself in a situation where he has to produce 4 years worth of records, kill off 1,000 healthy animals, because that's totally humane, or this 61-year-old egg farmer could go back to prison. And who knows what's going to end up in those records. Like I said, he was already in a dispute with the Alberta egg farmers over, these quotas, which is what put him in this predicament in the first place, selling eggs. I just hope people start to wake up at some point and see that what we're doing is not just, what it's doing is it's destroying our rural communities. And it's destroying people's right to choose who they buy from. It's consolidating. I hope things work out for Henk Van Essen. Anyway, guys, stay tuned for more here on Yanasa TV.